Yep. This is the video on testosterone cream. Look, there are many ways to raise testosterone using exogenous compounds, ranging from at the base level things like kisspeptin 10 to gonadorelin, which will marginally increase testosterone and really work on testosterone production from the hypothalamus pituitary level. There's obviously things like HCG, which will work on testicular synthesis of testosterone from the intratesticular level. Of course, there's Clomid and enclomiphene to raise testosterone. Really not ideal and ultimately suboptimal, quantifiably and provably. I mean, you don't want to be antagonizing estrogen receptors. There's deleterious side effects associated with that very clearly. Then there's mainstay, which is testosterone injections, right? That's what we all know and love, what I spend a good degree of time talking about content-wise in this channel, and that a lot of people successfully use. But what isn't talked about enough, but is kind of getting maybe a second wind out there, you know, in the webosphere, especially considering this graph in this peak, like how quickly you can peak and go into super physiological ranges depending on your dose of testosterone cream, and how in a lot of studies, estradiol really doesn't change all that much. May go up a little bit, but it doesn't skyrocket like it does in some of these longer esters. But importantly, I'm not sure if you've ever, dosed testosterone cream, either a scrotal application or otherwise application like on the shoulders, biceps, or forearms. But I have, and I'm going to explain to you what it feels like to get a surge of super physiologic testosterone in under 2 hours.
Hey, what up, say? One time for the hometown, I got love for it, that's real. Yeah. 2 times for the haters, man, cause I notice how this shit feel. 3 times for my family, dog, cause this shit.
Before we start the video, discount codes this week on product number 1, Supercharged Dopamine, 20% off. Code for that is 20. Perfect timing as usual. You'd think I'd learn. Code for that is 20 now. Probably the biggest special right now, 35% off the Torque Stack, and people are replacing their modafinil, their Adderall with this stuff. Codes and links are in the description of this video. And lastly, if you need to hire me for TRT, nootropics, sexual dysfunction, ED, host of other topics, you can do so in under a minute, livecortex.com. This is busy season, but I still have slots open. Okay, so a while ago, when I was with the previous company that I had been with for TRT, a company called Male Excel, I was on testosterone cypionates, and that's one of the only applications or modalities that they prescribe. And I decided, hey, maybe I should try something different. While testosterone injections are a mainstay, they can be problematic, right? I mean, some of the longer esters tend to aromatize a little more because they're sitting around longer. It becomes increasingly difficult to dial in your dose on longer esters for some guys. Some people do perfect on it. So I wanted to give it a shot, see what I thought. And then they prescribed me testosterone cream, and I had to go with it. So I ran testosterone cream for 40 days straight. This is a 200 milligram per milliliter, Toppy Click container. And what it took was 4 clicks of this to get 200 milligrams, an entire milliliter of testosterone. And among other things that happened, which I'm going to get to in this video, for dihydrotestosterone or DHT in a range of 12 to 65 nanograms per deciliter, I clocked in at 152. Okay, so that's very, very high DHT. So let's talk about application, then I'll get to my, results or the effects that I had, and we'll talk about testosterone cream. Test cream can be applied in a myriad of different ways. Number 1, you can apply it to your shoulders. Number 2, you can apply it to your biceps. You can apply it to your forearms. You can apply it to your inner thighs, and you can apply it to your upper chest. However, if you want pretty high levels of DHT, as seen on my blood work, right, because you're really trying to optimize libido or erectile function, I think this would be useful in people, particularly with issues that, maybe stem from the use of SSRIs. Potentially even finasteride, which is a terrible drug to take. I don't even know how people can morally prescribe that drug, and there are many companies out there doing that. But suffice to say, the scrotal application of testosterone cream skyrockets levels of test, radically increases levels of DHT, and usually comes with pretty profound energy and libido benefits. So people do it both ways, right? People might find that application to the scrotal area, just right on the testicles, like shaven testicles, might crank their DHT up like mine went, and they might be overstimulated and have side effects. And I actually did end up having side effects at the dose that I was on. I kind of had to dial that back just a little bit to feel good. Basically, it was overstimulating. I mean, I felt like I had drank far too much caffeine and maybe like paired it with modafinil or something. If you go to the testosterone subreddit, you're going to find a lot of different stories of people having success with testosterone cream and applying it in different ways that they found worked well for them. For example, 2 clicks in the morning, you take the applicator, you basically just turn this thing 1 time or 2 times, and then that's 2 clicks. The cream comes out of the top of it, and then you apply it. Doing that in the morning, scrotal application, and then later on in the day at like 4 or 5 p.m. or something, because this is often dosed twice daily, putting it on the shoulders. And in those cases, people get to kind of have their cake and eat it too, have positive benefits on the DHT side for libido and erection quality and generally having energy, but not have their DHT skyrocket where you're having hair loss or acne or whatever, right? Even though all those things are actually multifactorial and it's not just dihydrotestosterone. But the critical thing to look at is how fast testosterone cream peaks. If you really want to feel what super physiologic testosterone feels like very quickly, testosterone cream is definitely a good, modality to go to. This is a long paper that is titled Pharmacokinetics of Testosterone Cream Applied to Scrotal Skin, where in this descriptor they plain out say that administration of testosterone to the scrotal skin produced a swift increase in serum testosterone. If you look at this graph here, and you look at the measurement on the left-hand side, that is nanograms per milliliter. Typically, we think about testosterone in nanograms per deciliter, but all you would really have to do is multiply this by the number that you end up on. So, on the left here, the peak hit at, let's call it 8 nanograms per milliliter. That would be equivalent to 800 nanograms per deciliter. And if you ever, by the way, wanted to figure out that translation, you could just Google nanograms per milliliter to nanograms per deciliter, and Google actually has a calculator. So that ended up at 8, which takes us to 800 nanograms per deciliter. But here's the critical, distinction here, right? For some guys that are going to need hardcore DHT saturation, testosterone, right, binding to its target tissues, because you got testosterone that binds to its target tissues, and then dihydrotestosterone binds to its target tissues. I mean, if you want a peak in these things pretty quickly, we're looking at hour 2 here, okay? The peak basically happened right around hour 2, and that was at the high dose, which is 50 milligrams. Now, typically with these creams, people are prescribed higher doses than that. Like as an example, 200 milligrams per milliliter, and I was running 200 milligrams at a time. Again, looking at my DHT results, which were actually ran 2 hours post dosing. So at the absolute peak, I mean, imagine what testosterone would have been. Easily 1,200, 1,300 nanograms per deciliter. And when I tell you that I have never, ever, whether it was testosterone propionate, CYP, enanthate, high doses of HCG, whatever, I have never, ever felt on any testosterone application such profound energy so quickly. Like nothing touches scrotal application, transdermal application of testosterone cream in terms of energy. Nothing touches it. So much so that, again, guys have to kind of be a little careful and balance their doses out, where some scrotal application, some shoulder application, going down to 2 clicks in the morning, 1 click in the evening, or 3 clicks in the morning and no clicks in the evening. So you get a little bit of a trough. You got to manipulate it as you would with CYP and enthate, sustanon, everything else, to get the best effects and not have side effects. The most predominant of which really on cream are overstimulation. You just feel like you've had too many fucking lattes. Now, there's a lot of argument for testosterone cream being perhaps the most optimal way to apply testosterone. And the argument really is that you're mimicking diurnal rhythms to the greatest extent possible with a peak and a trough, right? Your testosterone is peaking in the morning, really peaks a little bit before you wake up, right around when you're waking up, if you're a natural. Then you've got that peak. And then once you reach your peak, if we go back to this graph, it basically peaks at 2 hours or so, and then it starts troughing, right? And by the hour 16, you're down to 400 to 500 nanograms per deciliter, right? So in that regard, it could be considered as close to diurnal rhythm as possible, at least with adequate fluctuations and a peak in the morning and then a trough later on compared to natural testosterone. Interestingly, they show in this paper that DHT rose to its peak at 5.6 hours after the testosterone administration. So if you're dosing this stuff in the morning at 5 a.m. or so, between 10 and 11 a.m. is when you can expect the DHT to peak. And then, thereafter, it's more than likely going to trough. But I think what's really interesting is that serum estradiol, in this particular case, did not display any significant changes in the time of peak or peak concentrations with the testosterone dose. Now, that doesn't mean that, estradiol didn't peak or go a little higher later. You can certainly find some anecdotals on Reddit of people that estradiol did, in fact, go up when they were using testosterone cream, and that's to be expected when you've got, high levels of testosterone. Aromatase is going to kind of grab that testosterone, convert it into estradiol, and that's that. There actually is a graph on that, and as you can see, with the highest dose of 50 milligrams at a time, estradiol didn't go above, looks like 35 picograms per milliliter, which is like really good for TRT purposes. You start getting to 40, pushing 50 or whatever, kind of depends on how much androgens you have laying around, but generally that's erectile dysfunction territory. For men that are on injections like cypionate or enanthate, or even propionate, I mean, propionate's a little little easier on the estradiol because it's just not constantly peaking. You actually have a nice trough there. That are having a hard time with estrogen, and they've got a microdose Arimidex or microdose Aromacin to take some calcium to glucarate to get this squared away, because you figured out that estradiol in a particular range is good for you, above which there's problems and below which there's problems. Then testosterone cream might actually be a really radical solution. But if it's so good and so epic, why didn't I keep running it? Well, look, I like to try things. I like to change things. I'll have a good protocol, and I usually warn against this because some people can't get themselves out of a mess that they might get in by changing a protocol. Thankfully, I've been able to get myself out of each mess that I might have gotten in from changing a protocol. But I like to change things, and I kind of wanted to see, and I also wanted to see if estradiol was easier to control on cream, which it definitely ended up being. The real issue with me is that it is a lot less convenient. It's like if you're rubbing it on your shoulders, not a big deal, right? But if you're doing the transscrotal application, like you kind of have to have the area shaved, or at least ideally it's shaved. To be the most optimal, you'd have a derma roller, which kind of goes in, it's like micro needling right on the testicular skin, and then you apply it. Sex immediately after application is kind of frowned upon. You transfer that to a woman and she's going to have some side effects. She'll probably have a higher libido, but there could be some negatives that can come along with that. You don't want that. You can transfer it to kids, all that kind of stuff, right? So those are some of the negatives. But importantly for me, it's like, I don't know, my second application of it was between 3 and 5 p.m., right? So in 3 and 5 p.m., like, I don't know, sometimes I'd be out to dinner. Yes, I'll be ready to order in just a second. I've just gotta put this cream on my balls. Interestingly, as I said, as I've talked about recently, I'm running testosterone propionate right now as an experiment. It's been very, very good to me. I really like the energy. Sexual function is actually the best it's been on most other protocols. Post-injection pain with testosterone propionate is a real big problem. It definitely does hurt. And there's negatives to everything, right? But ultimately, for me, again, I ended up rotating sites, but initially doing transscrotal application, and my DHT just went entirely too high. Now, I didn't have hair loss. I didn't have any weird DHT side effects. I basically just felt very overstimulated when that happened. But quite honestly, I like DHT to be high. Don't get me wrong, but I like a nice balance between testosterone, dihydrotestosterone, and estradiol. I like the estrogen between 20 and 30, 35 max picograms per milliliter, like total test above 1,000. I like DHT above range, but not quite 152 nanograms per deciliter. I like around 80, 90 nanograms per deciliter. That's where I feel best. I might go back to cream, who knows? Because I know for me, definitely shorter esters, fast-acting esters are just better for my physiology. But the one point that I wanted to hammer home about testosterone cream is there really is no other administration of testosterone. I can't even say that propionate matches up to it. That gives you a surge of energy and allows you to feel what super physiologic levels of testosterone feel like very, very quickly. Testosterone applications and testosterone esters are not created equally. They onset at different times. They peak differently. They convert to metabolites differently. They are actually different. The pharmacokinetics are different, and the effects at the tissue levels and the subjective effects for the person are also different. All I would say is this: if you're somebody that's been struggling on cypinanthate, sustanon, any long esters, maybe you tried propionate, it didn't work out for you. You've been running sub-Q CYP every day, and that's not working out for you. You split it up into every 4th day or 5th day, 100, 120 milligrams. That's not working out for you. Consider test cream, because not only does it have a good chance of restoring libido and erection function in a way which testosterone is supposed to restore, but also you don't convert a lot to estradiol or as much. And the energy is unmatched. So even though there's a lot of them, I can confidently say that the strongest testosterone application that I have ever dosed was testosterone cream. All right, I hope that's been useful. Look, guys, I am in busy season with consulting. I just got booked for a couple 6-month programs, a 3-month program, 2 1-year programs, but I still have a couple slots open for those of you that are trying to get in. We do long-term good work on these consultations. You can book me in under a minute, livecortex.com. Specialties ranging from TRT, sexual optimization, ED, nootropic regimen formulation, just full-on performance optimization for men, because that is what this business is about. Torque Stack. 35% off. Code for that is 35 Torque. I'm always giving you guys discounts. Codes are in the description of this video. And if you go to the menu, we've got 6 video courses, yours truly, 5 digital guides on nootropics, TRT, biohacking, and male performance. All that stuff in the description of this video or at livecortex.com. All right, boys, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you. For those of you that did not catch the long podcast about TRT, DHT, HCG, nootropics, 9-MeBC, cerebral lysin with Vigorous Steve and I'll link it down in the description of this video. Please go watch watch that video. It's getting a lot of attention, a lot of views, a lot of comments. I'd appreciate if you guys go watched it. Otherwise, sub to the channel. Hit the like button, please. It takes a minute. It's free. It helps us tremendously. Hope you're having a great day. Hope you're having a great week. I'll talk to you guys on the next one.